So welcome back to part 5 of ranking every single Academy Award Best Picture winner. In this video, we'll be talking about the 1970s, which may be the strongest decade in terms of quality. Starting off strong with 1970s winner, Patton. This was directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, starring George C. Scott as Patton himself and Karl Malden. So this basically details the life of George S. Patton during World War II, specifically his operations in Africa, and it goes through about the fall of the German Third Reich, and it's pretty much a character study along with, a lot of enormous, huge battle sequences that are just really impressive. George C. Scott did win the Academy Award for Best Actor. He did not accept it because he's one of those actors that didn't believe in awards for acting, and all respect to him for that. But he did do an amazing, incredible job in this film. It's a little long, but if you have some patience for it, you will be rewarded. What I like about this movie, it does not glamorize the man. I mean, maybe a little bit. Certainly, it details how much of a strategic and military genius he was, but it also shows a lot of his faults, especially concerning how he feels about, PTSD in soldiers. This does feature a screenplay written by Francis Ford Coppola, who we will be talking about soon. It's probably most famous for the famous, I think, 15-minute opening scene of Patton standing in front of an enormous American flag as he delivers a rousing speech to his troops. This is a fantastic biopic. I'm going to give this one 4.5 stars. The 1971 winner is The French Connection, directed by William Friedkin, starring, of course, the late Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider. This is basically a cop procedural where Gene Hackman plays a detective trying to track down some heroin dealers, and not small-time ones. He's trying to figure out who the supply of the heroin dealers are. In other words, the French connection of the heroin dealers. Hackman did win an Academy Award for this one, and he deserved it. He's amazing in this film. Like Patton, he's a very flawed hero. Sometimes takes the law into his own hands, sometimes has some, questionable police tactics, and maybe just a tiny little bit of a racist. William Friedkin at his best here. And of course features probably one of the greatest car chase sequences of all time, where Gene Hackman is driving through the streets of New York, chasing an elevated subway train. And the only way to do that was to do it practically without getting any permits and pretty much endangering people's lives. One of the greatest films ever made. French Connection is 5 stars. Speaking of one of the greatest movies ever made, 1972's winner is The Godfather. Since I have the box set here of the 3 Godfather films, I'm just going to talk about the 1972 and the 1974 winner at the same time. The Godfather in 1972 and The Godfather Part 2 in 1974. Both directed by Francis Ford Coppola. You probably know this, but I'll rattle off the cast anyway. Al Pacino, James Caan, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton, R.I.P., Talia Shire. In Part 1, we get Marlon Brando. In Part 2, we get Robert De Niro. I mean, I don't really know what to say about these films. They're both absolutely perfection in filmmaking. I mean, I don't even know if there's anybody left in this world who hasn't seen either The Godfather or The Godfather Part 2. There's always some debate as to which one is the better film, Godfather 1 or 2. Of course, nobody ever says 3, which isn't that bad, honestly. It's one of those opinions that you can't really be wrong about, whether you prefer Godfather 1 or Godfather 2. They're both excellent. They are both American cinematic classics. If I had to pick, I would probably give Godfather 1 just the slightest edge, for no real reason other than I've seen that one more and I have more nostalgia attached to it. But Godfather 2, I mean, it's kind of like saying $1,000 is better than $999. Of course, 5 stars on both films. So we did 1972 and 1974 together. We're going to circle back to 1973's winner, The Sting. This one is directed by George Roy Hill, starring Butch Cassidy and Sundance themselves, Paul Newman and Robert Redford, along with Robert Shaw. As I just mentioned, Redford and Newman, who had just amazing on-screen chemistry together, are reunited here from the fantastic Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, a film that is also a masterpiece that you should watch. And they play 2 con men in 1930s Chicago whose friend is killed by the mob. So they try to get revenge on the mob by staging a very elaborate sting operation and basically conning the mob out of some money. This is honestly just a charm fest. It's a lot of fun. If you like films like Ocean's 11, you'd probably get a real big kick out of The Sting. I'm going to give The Sting 4.5 stars. 1975's winner is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, directed by Milos Forman, based on the novel by Ken Kesey. This stars Jack Nicholson, of course, in the starring role, also Brad Dourif and Louise Fletcher in an Academy Award-winning supporting actress role, or maybe Best Actress, I can't remember. And in some small roles, we have Danny DeVito and Christopher Lloyd. You may have read this book in high school, but this is one of those movies that I think exceeds the source material. Jack Nicholson plays a kind of petty criminal that fakes being insane so that he can be put into a mental ward instead of going to prison. And the film is basically kind of a scathing criticism of how mental patients are treated in these facilities. Jack Nicholson is initially not a likable character. He's kind of a scumbag, but by the end of the film, he isn't necessarily redeemed, but you do leave with the feeling of, you know, not even someone like Jack Nicholson's character deserves what he's getting in this film. Of course, a major villain turn by Louise Fletcher as Nurse Ratched. One of the highest recommendations I can give. Excellent acting all around. 5 stars. And in 1976, yo Adrian, we have Rocky. Sylvester Stallone, of course, stars in this as Rocky, and he's one of the people that brought it to life. He was the writer of this one after supposedly seeing a Chuck Wepner fight where he was getting basically his ass kicked, but he just kept coming back. And Stallone was inspired to write Rocky. Now, I think the film gets a bad reputation for 2 reasons. On the one hand, it's a film that beat out some really strong competition that year, like All the President's Men, Taxi Driver, Network, all amazing films. 1976 was an amazing film year. But I think the other reason that people might give this one a hard time is because they're thinking of the sequels from the 80s, like Rocky 3 and Rocky 4, which are a lot more popcorn entertainment and a little more on the cheesy side, even though I love those movies. That said, this is a movie that isn't as hopeful and cheerful as those other movies. Rocky's whole goal in this film is not to win the fight against the world heavyweight champion, who is basically Muhammad Ali. The character's name is Apollo Creed and played by the great late Carl Weathers. But yeah, his goal is not to beat Carl Weathers. His goal is just to make it to the end of the fight. I'm not sure if this movie invented the montage training sequence, but it certainly popularized it. It's also a great love story with Talia Shire and Sylvester Stallone, Burt Young and Carl Weathers in amazing supporting performances, and John G. Avildsen just makes a great underdog hero story, and he did it again in '84 with The Karate Kid. Look, I'm not saying you have to like this more than Taxi Driver or All the President's Men or Network. Again, all amazing films. But this is a great freaking movie. And yeah, I'm giving it 5 stars. Okay, Annie Hall, 1977's winner. This is gonna come with a lot of baggage because, of course, it was written, directed, and stars Woody Allen. And if you are current with the news, Woody Allen's name has appeared in a certain list, and that is not great. Also, Woody Allen, not exactly a stranger to this sort of controversy, having a, some would say, inappropriate relationship with the daughter of his girlfriend. Now, while he wasn't technically illegal, certainly is a little creepy. And Woody Allen has also been accused of some, I don't want to get banned from the app, so I'll just say inappropriate things with children. Now, because I don't want to get sued, I have to point out that an accusation does not mean guilt, and he has never been arrested or convicted of any crime. You can draw your own conclusions, but I have to factually say that so I don't get sued. All right, as for the movie itself, it basically shows the entire relationship, beginning, middle, and end, Woody Allen's character and Diane Keaton's character, the titular Annie Hall. And it is a fun romantic comedy. I mean, would I have awarded it Best Picture in 1977, the year Star Wars came out? Probably not. Diane Keaton is charming as hell. On the whole, I'd give this movie 4 stars. Now, some people can separate the art from the artist, and some people can't do that. Neither one is right. Neither one is wrong. If you can't separate the art from the artist, then don't watch this. That's totally valid and totally cool. The 1978 Oscar Best Picture winner is Michael Cimino's The Deer Hunter. It might be Cimino, but I think it's Cimino. I'm not actually 100% sure. This stars Robert De Niro, John Cazale, Meryl Streep, Christopher Walken. Walken got himself a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this one. This you could basically boil down to Vietnam PTSD, the movie. It's about some steel workers in Pennsylvania. They're deer hunters, and they all enlist in the Vietnam War. First chunk of the movie is basically the marriage between John Savage's character and Meryl Streep's character, and it's the entire wedding. Then we spend a good portion on Vietnam, where we see just the hell that these soldiers go through. And the third act is the ramifications of them dealing with their trauma. Now, a lot of people give this movie crap because of the extended wedding sequence. A lot of people find it boring. I'm not one of those people. I think it's very important to show how normal everything is and how all these characters are just going to a wedding and living their lives. Because then it juxtaposes really nicely with the basically hell on earth that is the Vietnam War. This movie is all about trauma. It's one of the few war films that does not glamorize war. And also, because I'm not going to get another moment to talk about it, can we talk about how John Cazale had like one of the most like short but amazing film careers of all time? Godfather, Godfather 2, The Conversation, The Deer Hunter, Dog Day Afternoon. Bro was just hitting out banger after banger. A lot of people prefer the 1979 big Vietnam film Apocalypse Now over The Deer Hunter. Both films are excellent. Apocalypse Now definitely has the more interesting behind the scenes stories, but The Deer Hunter is an excellent film. I highly recommend it. 5 stars. We round out the 1970s with what might be the weakest film of the entire decade, but it's not a weak film at all. It's a very good film, Kramer vs. Kramer. Directed by Robert Benton, starring Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep. This is a story about Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep, who are a married couple. Meryl Streep just decides one day that she just can't take married life and motherhood really anymore and decides to leave Dustin, leaving him to be a single father to a little boy that they had. Basically, the whole film is about how he deals with not only his feelings of abandonment, but also trying to figure out how to be a single father. Very dramatic. It's meant to be a tearjerker and tug on your heartstring. Very much is like what you think of when you think of like an Oscar bait kind of movie. That said, Dustin Hoffman, Meryl Streep, both incredible here. Overall, I'd probably give this one 3.5 stars. So that rounds out our list of the Academy Award Best Picture winners for the 1970s. Our next video, part 6, will be the 1980s, which is a kind of a weird decade for Best Picture winners. But until then, please do all the engagement stuff down below. Thanks for watching, and as always, remember, buy physical media.